Hello, my name is Victoria Mulheron and I am doing my investigative research project for Dr. Josh Webster in English 102 at Great Basin College. The name of my project is To Goad or Not to Goad, and in essence, to goad means to push others to influence them in a certain direction, and throughout this project I'm going to be asking you if you push. And so we have established that goading is influencing another. So when I say, do you push, I am essentially asking you, do you influence others positively or negatively? So before we really dive into the controversy and each side's opposing and supporting details, I want to establish really what I'm going to be going over and the meaning of it. So the purpose of this project is to argue that you must both be kind to others and respect their opinions, but bullying should not be terminated because it can immensely influence people to work towards personal mental growth. So my project is discussing the controversy concerning the importance of bullying and whether it is necessary when students need to develop emotional strength or if it has serious negative outcomes on mental health. So what I wanted to define really was what is bullying. So Dan Olwalis from Bullying or Peer Abuse at School, Facts and Intervention, says bullying is when a student is being exposed in a state of vulnerability repetitively by one or more outside parties. So they must be vulnerable, it must be a repetitive action, and it must be from one or more outside parties, according to Dan. So in order to show you, the audience, different views on bullying, I must go in depth about each side's opinion and their supporting details. So I will begin that now. So I'm going to begin with bullying as an influencer on poor mental health. So I started off with an interview, and I interviewed Alexandria Lellis on the topic of bullying as a negative influence on personal and mental health. So I asked her opinions on it and how they can directly relate to her own life in one or more instances. She was quick to provide me with answers. She told me that in her life, bullying has clearly been a negative influence on her mental health. One major event of this was being called fat by her fellow cheer team members in high school. They were just kidding, but this was something that truly bothered her before they had mentioned it. So in time, Alexandria told me she developed bulimia and anorexia, which is a mental and physical health issue, which she will deal with her entire life. She says a second situation was when she found herself often excluded from social events. She started to develop depression. After she had depression, she wasn't interested in going out anymore. She'd rather stay at home and not see anyone all day. She told me how this was becoming very unhealthy for her physically and mentally. So this can cause problems for her when she's living on her own, she says, and she'll have to worry about paying for a therapist and taking care of herself, which she is not capable of doing at the moment. So she believes that she is less capable of taking care of herself than other people are because of her eating disorder and her depression. So one topic that Alexandria argued to me was that her depression was influenced by bullying, but mostly it is just how she is. She told me that depression is a sickness, not something that you can really develop. So although she did say that it can be easier goaded in a more negative direction once the victim has already developed depression. So the next supporting detail I'm going to present for bullying as an influencer on poor mental health is if bullying can have negative health outcomes. So basically from the interview we kind of already discussed how she was bullied and she developed negative health habits like bulimia, anorexia, depression. She became uninterested. She stayed at home all the time, and she was becoming really unhealthy in many aspects. So the first article that I'm going to present is Workplace Bullying and the Risk of Cardiovascular Disease and Depression, published in the British Medical Journal. And I am including my citations in the caption of this video, so make sure you go look at that. And it evaluates the outcomes of bullying on physical and mental health. It examines how when employees are exposed to bullying in the workplace, their risk for cardiovascular disease and depression are heightened. Although the article concluded that a larger percentile of bully victims are obese, and this influenced the results on the cardiovascular disease data. So, although depression was a major result of bullying, they are trying to argue that cardiovascular disease was also a major result of bullying, being a victim of bullying. And by the end of their article, they basically contradicted themselves and proved themselves wrong, that cardiovascular disease really wasn't, because a large majority of the bully victims that they interviewed were obese, which cardiovascular disease is a side effect of obesity. So this is just one example of many that helps show how bullying affects both mental and physical health. So another article that can help support this statement is Bullying Exerts Psychiatric Effects into Adulthood, published in JAMA Psychiatry. The article talks about how bullied people often deal with effects their entire lives, for example, depression, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, social awkwardness, issues with substance abuse, more impulsive, and more aggressive. According to Bullying Experts Psychiatric Effects into Adulthood study, only a quarter of students surveyed admitted to being victimized. From the same batch of kids, only 70% confessed to actually being bullies themselves. So is this because it feels wrong to be bullied, or to be a bully yourself? Do people not want to, fill it out on a survey or admit to themselves? So in my experience, I have been bullied, and I have been a bully myself. And I won't really talk about this later on in the project, so I'll just do a little sum up of it. But I know that as a middle schooler, it really influenced me to do both, bully and be bullied. So middle schoolers are typically more self-conscious of themselves, especially middle school girls, so that can be a big influence on how they act around other people and how they're going to portray themselves and how they're going to goad others in their lives. So that's just an example of it. So only 7% confessed to actually being bullies themselves, like I said a minute ago. So I just wanted to analyze that and think about if in the survey, if all of them were really telling the truth, because it is hard to just kind of come out and say oh yeah, I'm a bully, or yeah, I'm bullied, if it's a serious situation. So from the students being victimized, most will have major depressive episodes and greater anxiety problems than the average person. The students who actually bully other students become socially adept and use these traits to rank higher at work, home, and any other social group, for example, church or any team they are joining. So try to imagine someone who's bullying. They are going to use that as kind of like a little prop, like something to prop them up at work. So a supervisor bullying their employees, or a team captain bullying its other co-players. So those are things, they'll bully them so that they can feel better about themselves. And a big thing with bullies is they really feel self-conscious about themselves, and it's because their own insecurities, or it's because, according to research that I've done, it will be because they feel insecure about their position. So if a team player is doing better than the captain will bully the player in order to place higher them on the hierarchical scale. So they will cause more depression around them and influence an unhealthy state of mind to the ones closest to them when they venture into adulthood. Those are the bullies. And the most emotionally unstable group in the study was the bully victims. So those are the kids who bully and are bullied. And from my experience in life, that is a large majority of the population, but in this survey, it's only making up about 7% as well. But the bully victims are known to have significant mental issues throughout their lives, including depression, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, issues with substance abuse, and are overall more aggressive than the average person. These statistics are significant because they greatly influence human mental health and long-term health costs. And this is where we'll start to dip into the next topic, which is effects on the pocket of America concerning health costs. So let's take a look here. So our next supporting detail is whether it is unhealthy to visit the doctor's office often, and how much it will cost in the long term for both our country and for the attendees' families and the attendee themselves if they are moved out of the home already. So although the article's main argument is that if you lower the amount of bullying, health costs will significantly be reduced as well, since all the problems mentioned above cost big bucks when trying to fix. So the article I'm talking about is bullying exerts psychiatric effects into adulthood. So this is another major problem with bullying. It's costing our country billions yearly to aid. So I challenge you to ask yourself, is this helpful and or necessary? Is bullying helpful to you at all? Unless you're the bully, is it helpful? Or is it necessary? Like, do you really need to bully another person? Or is it going to affect them worse in the long run than it would help you in the instance that you are bullying another? So the side of the coral that argues bullying isn't helpful thinks that it should be put to a stop in order to help improve the overall mental health of its victims and save the country billions of dollars in unnecessary health care costs. So that's just one of their supporting details on this side of the controversy. So my next detail is, are victims less productive in the workplace when bullied by a supervisor, like their boss, for example? So the article Supervisory Bullying, Status Inequalities, and Organizational Context by Vincent J. Riscontio, Stephen H. Lopez, and Randy Hodson analyzes the presence of bullying in the workplace and and who commonly initiates the quarrel in the beginning. So the common bullies are supervisors or employees in higher ranking than the victimized. From there, the article draws the conclusion that bullying following the form of hierarchy is prevalent in most discourse communities, for example, teams, families, schools, and churches. And you'll see this pattern kind of show up throughout the whole project. And in conclusion, the authors talk about how this can be detrimental to overall production because of community members' mental health. So if your employees are depressed because you are picking on them so much, they will have thoughts of quitting, a bad attitude, less job security, less respect for their bosses, and they will influence a very depressive theme in which the workplace will make overall productivity suffer. So it would be generally advised to not bully your employees or your team members as a captain or the coach, or as a parent, to be super strict on your kid because they won't view you as a friend. And this is from this side of the argument. So that's another thing this side of the argument likes to support. The same people you see supporting not bullying, you see supporting modern parenting, which would be being kind to your kid and taking them as your friend. When if you look at the other side of this argument, the people who want bullying and think that it's positive for personal growth will support, the old school type of parenting, which is, be strict on your kid, have curfews, you're not their friend, you are their parent sort of style. So you'll see that pattern too throughout this. So the last supporting point for this side of the argument is, do victims of bullying suffer academically? So they believe that bullying should be put to a stop, and academic suffrage is a big deal in this because it's influenced by bullying in the school zone, and they want to end that, because if the students are suffering academically, they are going to take that to college and they're going to suffer there, and they're going to take that outside of college and into the workplace, and they're not going to know what they're doing because they did not care throughout high school and throughout college, and they're going to have less general knowledge than the average person will because they have lack of interest due to depression. So I retrieved an article from UCLA's online library database concerning how victims of bullying suffer academically. The article covers how students who are bullied repetitively do worse in school versus the students who are not. Some major causes of this discussed are truancy due to vulnerability, lack of interest due to depression, a higher dropout rate due to both vulnerability and depression. So students should be less engaged, or would be less engaged during this class discussions, and would show little to no interests in completing coursework. And this can be detrimental to our country because people are influenced by bullying for their entire lives after it happened, and goading them to act less engaged in their work environments and care less about overall business success in their futures. So next we have bullying as an opportunity for personal growth. So this is going to be discussing the other side of the conversation, not so much, bullying is so detrimental to your emotions, it's going to make you depressed, it's going to make you not fit in, it's going to make you hate yourself, it's going to make you stay at home all the time, sort of thing. This side of the argument says, no, bullying will help you. It'll help you be stronger. It'll help you have more character, and that sort of deal. So I also began this side as an interview. So I interviewed the sister of Alexandria Lellis. So this is interesting because they both came from the same household. So you can see, even though they were parented by the same people, they still have their own personality types and view life differently. So I interviewed Rebecca Lellis on the topic of bullying as an influence on positive mental health. So I asked for her opinions on it and how they directly relate to her own life in one or more instances. She was quick to provide me with answers, and she told me that in her life, bullying has helped her to grow stronger due to the need for self-acceptance. So A major situation that Rebecca found herself in was when she was 10. She was taller than most girls and she had a pixie cut. Many of the girls in her class would make fun of her and call her boy because she also dressed like the tomboy. If you look at old pictures of her, she has really short hair, she's always really dirty and hanging out with all the boys and wearing baggy t-shirts and shorts. And she even told me a story. She went into 7-Eleven one time and the employee there said, he said, "Hey, I used to look just like you when I was a little boy." And then she was like, "I'm not a boy." So she was viewed as a boy to other people when they didn't hear her talk. And she said that this could have really hurt her and she could have gone and thrown a pity party, but she decided to laugh at the girls and play with the boys because they were nicer. She got over the mental abuse quickly because she decided it was not worth her time. She concluded that if she wasn't called a boy back then, she would not have been as durable as she is now to the insults or bullying. So she believes that if she had not been bullied when she was younger, she would not be as strong as she is now. She told me she performs better in situations that people would normally freak out about and does not mind people teasing her. She is not sensitive like many victims of mental and physical abuse. Unlike her sister, Alexandria Lellis, she can fully understand others when they bully her. She argues that when others bully you, that is because of their own insecurities, like I said earlier. So we have our next supporting detail. It was difficult to find supporting details for this side of the argument because it is a kind of less positively viewed side to choose, and there weren't any too many professional articles on it due to the fact that you will see a lot more liberals on the side as bullying as an influencer for poor mental health than you will as a bullying as an influencer on positive mental health. And since liberals tend to dominate the school systems nowadays, there was a minimal amount of articles on the conservative side's viewpoint. So this is mainly going to be analyzing one or two articles that I found and the interview, because bullying really is truly emotional and it's kind of difficult to do a research project on it because it's more to do with emotions than statistics. So the next supporting detail is can bullying have positive health effects? So we talked about earlier how it can have a long list of negative health effects, but we're going to talk about the opposite side of that now. So although being bullied can be very detrimental to mental health, it can be just as helpful to it, argues Dr. Helen Goldberg. Dr. Goldberg says there are sentiments intended to protect pupils from every unpleasant playground experience, from name-calling to physical fights, and reflect the modern obsession with shielding children from every conceivable danger. But in reality, they are robbing them of the opportunity to learn some of life's most valuable lessons. So this is the common viewpoint on this topic. So she strongly disagrees with the zero tolerance policy for bullying in school zones. She argues that it teaches kids that as an adult will always be there to resolve their problems in an instant, which can be unhealthy from her viewpoint. And I personally would have to agree with that statement. And she thinks that having emotional scars is preferable if it helps to build character and positively influences personal development and mental health. So our next supporting detail is, are you more productive when bullied by your boss or someone of higher hierarchical positioning than you? So The party that believes bullying helps children grow personally also believes that a strict boss is a productive boss. This is a highly argued topic in the world of business. Although being strict on a crowd can actually be detrimental to a group of workers, says Emma Sapella in her article on the hard data on being a nice boss. So I really searched hard for an article that showed the viewpoint of being a strict boss as a positive thing and helping employees to work more productively and quicker. And I couldn't find one. All of the articles started out talking about how this was a good thing, but they all ended in saying it in the end is not good. So Emma Sapella talks about this. She tries to argue that being a strict boss is helpful to a group, but her conclusion says that she cannot ignore the facts. It's not. When leaders are fair to their employees, they find that the employees are more loyal and productive. So, in conclusion, do you think bullying should be stopped if witnessed? At what point is it too serious? So, bosses, for example, will be strict on their employees, and this can be a good thing because they will work harder and more efficiently, but if they are too strict, the employees will become depressed, and that is to the point of bullying because it is a state of vulnerability, it's repetitive, and it is from one or more parties. So that falls into our previously mentioned definition of bullying by Dan O. Ellis. So also another question I wanted to ask you, the audience, before concluding this research project was, do you push? I want to know. I'm not asking for an answer. I just want you to ask yourself, do you influence others in a positive or negative way? And whether this is aside from the whole controversy, do you think if you're bullying them or if you're not bullying them, if you bully them and it's influencing them positively, then that's good. It's a positive thing. But if you're bullying them and it's influencing them negatively, that's a negative thing. So, and you could not bully them and influence them positively, or you could not bully them and influence them negatively because they would never learn. They wouldn't ever come to a conclusion in their struggles. So, to goad or not to goad? Thank you for listening to my investigative research project, and I am looking forward to hearing the results, and I am also looking forward to make a change and see if you push or if I am pushing in different situations in my life. Thank you.